Well, this is going to be a treat tonight. We have Rick with Renrick's Farm and Gardens. And Renrick's is probably the largest natural perennial grower in the state. And he has got a treat for us today. We're gonna learn all about gardens through the eyes of pollinators. And I'm just really excited about this presentation. Rick, why don't you tell us a little bit about your business and your farm and gardens and how you came to be?
Well, I'll start off with the fact of our name, Renrick. When we chose that name back in 76, 77, we had purchased an Irish setter. And the lady told me that I needed to have a kennel name. So we thought Rick Wren, that sounded more like Iran and Iraq. So we decided to switch it so it became Renrick, Renee and Rick. And that's we registered that Irish setter. By the way, I had him in the dorms for 3 months without anyone finding out. So anyway, we are a natural grower. We don't use any chemicals. So I can't pump up a plant that doesn't have it in its genetics. We started way back in '84 with aquarium plants, then it became pond plants, and then it became plants to support the pond waterscapes. And now after I had a water moccasin go across my hand in a aquarium, we stopped doing water, period. I do still have water lilies, but anyway, we went to perennials, and I'm a hemiholic, which is a daylily addict, and then I guess hibiscus holic too. I hybridize on both of those, but we've been doing this at the farmers market since for at least 19 or 20 years, and we did eBay, and we started with them when they first started up in '96 to 2005, and we were also members of the Oklahoma Food Co-op. So, and we grow what we like and what will thrive here in Oklahoma. And a lot of it we field test, and then I also attend trials. Trials are where hybridizers send their seeds to be grown by like Colorado State or the Denver Arboretum. And so I can go there and I can look at perennials or I can look at annuals. And for example, I'll pick petunias. If there's purple petunias, every hybridizer will be right next to each other, so I can look at them to decide if I want to grow those. It's a great opportunity, and it's open to the public. I highly recommend going to Colorado State, and they have beautiful gardens there on that campus. So that's sort of how we're in it. We do the Norman Farmers Market, we do the Edmond Farmers Market, we do ODAF. ODAF is the Department of Agriculture and Forestry, and that's on Tuesdays. And then we also even ship to some of the groups like daylilies and hibiscus. And if you're ready to move on to the whole thing, I'll even tell you how we came up with the name of the presentation.
Yes, I would love to hear it.
Well, when I was in publishing, and just a young kid, we're talking 23 years old, I was at Wichita State with my big manager, and we had the national manager flying in that night at 8 o'clock, and we had set up a very nice steak dinner at where you make reservations and all that. So Daryl came in. Most of my managers' names were Wilson, which was a little confusing as far as emails. But so Tom's all excited because he's a food connoisseur, and he's very picky. I'm not. But Daryl got off the plane, and first thing out of Daryl's mouth was, "I know where we're going to eat." And I said, "Where's that?" And he said, "I saw it flying in. Big sign, buffet, all you can eat, on the top of the building." It was at the airport buffet. And the point of that is that all of us have our own interest. And for example, if you're driving in a car and you're going down the road, and for example, let's just say you like trees or you like sunsets or houses or cattle or whatever, you'll notice everyone you pass by. Well, Daryl liked buffets. And pollinators are actually have an advantage over us in their eyesight, especially bees. They have a ultraviolet that they can see ultraviolet. And when they look at plants, they can see the plant, and it's almost like there's a target on the bloom, if you follow me. And this is all supported with research, but the point of this presentation is not to do a science, because I'm not a scientist, as just to basically show you what colors that the different pollinators and bees and butterflies and birds can see. And that way you can, to your own taste for a garden, you can pitch it that way, you know. So if you like a solid pink or a solid red, you can do that. There are some consequences because bees do not see red at all. So anyway, you can move on to the next slide. And if there's any questions, stop me. Now, I hope you all can see. I can't see the whole thing, but uh, there's a, anyway, the first top line is bees. And then what I did is I just did a little color. Bees can see green, purple, blue, yellow, ultraviolet. And then at the end of it, it says bees cannot see red. There's a whole paper on that. And if anyone's interested, I can send the value of bees. For example, just 80% of our crops are pollinated by bees. And I would hate to think that we would have to start hiring people to hand pollinate every food product, you know, out there. Would not be a fun job, at least not for me. The birds, for example, have a problem. They can't see whites, reds, pinks, oranges, yellows, and blues. And I chose primary colors because it's all the colors in between that. So it could be a reddish pink or it could be a orange pink. Uh, they can see that. And then butterflies are pretty much, they can see all the colors. They do have a specific that they like the hotter colors. And knowing that, and the fact that they know green, I've always wondered, I guess you'd say I ask questions uh, by by observing things. For example, we plant porterweeds, and the first time we did this, I was noticing even before the plants were blooming, butterflies were landing on it. And there's no nectar. Porterweeds are a nectar magnet for butterflies. They're used in all the butterfly houses, like the Houston Botanical. It's a 3-story butterfly house, and then also the one in Colorado, Broomfield. They use them for usually right across from the bench to grab the attention of kids if they've got a timeout on the bench, or if someone is having trouble walking through a resting place. So it gives a photo op. But evidently, butterflies have an ability to sort of know. It's sort of like they've got the Daryl. They can sit there and they can see the big buffet sign. It's just not open yet, you know. So, any questions on the vision of the bees? And I mean, all the insects have very complex eye structures. And as I said, if anyone wants some of the white papers I've read, doesn't mean I've understood every word of it. So, but it does give you a rationale of why bees are very, very important to our economy, very important to our gardens, and so are the whole niche. That's why we are a natural grower. And if you want to check how well you're doing as far as nature's concerned, look for amphibians, salamanders, frogs, toads, and that they're very sensitive to chemicals. So we move to the next slide, unless there's any questions, and feel free to ask questions.
And I'll check the chat occasionally to see if there's any
Okay.
questions there as well.
Okay, so what I did is basically picked out the top pollinator plants, and there's reasons I picked these examples. And for example, agastaches are great plants, and we've grown multiple different varieties of them. Unfortunately, so many of them are sensitive to wetness in the winter and they rot out. Blue Fortune is one that doesn't. And Blue Fortune will bloom roughly from mid-June all the way to frost. And that's if you deadhead it. It blooms a good 60 days without deadheading it. It's a fragrant plant. It's a hyssop. It has a fragrance, and this is why I like agastaches, is that the fragrance is very distinct. And this one has one that is either I would call it anise or licorice. There's one called uh, Lappy Taffy, and it is or Tutti Frutti, excuse me, and it smells like the taste of double bubble gum. When I was a kid, I don't know how to describe it, but you know how you can smell, you can taste something, and it's a smell that matches it. It's a great plant. The birds don't mess with it too much in the sense that the seeds are too small, I guess, for them to pick the seed off. But the butterflies, the hummingbirds, well, I take it back, the hummingbirds because of nectar, uh, and then also the bees. And typically, I see at 6 o'clock, I'll see honeybees, and unfortunately, we don't see as many as we used to. And then we'll see the bumblebees, and then the butterflies, I guess, wake up or it gets warm enough during the summer that they're flying by then. Um, Firefly is just a beautiful. Yarrows are just beautiful plants, but they are excellent nectar plants for that. And actually, if you think about pollinators, it's almost a symbiotic relationship. The plants depend upon the bees to pollinate, and the other pollinators. The bees have an advantage over some other of them because of that UV ability, and evidently the flowers on some of them, for example, it's like they put a bullseye, is how it's described. It's in one of the science of exactly where they have to go to get to the nectar causes them to scrape against the pollen. And in the bees' case, they usually carry it on their feet or on their legs. But yarrows are great. They come in a lot of different colors. Firefly is just absolutely, it blooms a real dark pink. And then as the blooms age, it fades out. And that's why I chose that picture, because that's more realistic. The first blooms, it's going to be really dark. You can go to the next one. And then here's the sassy summer taffy. That's where I was thinking of a few minutes ago. And that's a whole series. The sassy series is they're shorter. We have a native yarrow. It's white. It has a pretty strong fragrance to it. Not a pleasant fragrance. I wouldn't cut the white ones to put into bouquets. I would any of the others that are domestic. Um, but anyway, it's a great one. It's very upright, very stiff stem, and all the pollinators love it. The plant to the right is one of two very crucial plants, and they're milkweeds. This is Cinderella. It's a native milkweed. It can get up to 42 inches. Uh, Typically in our yard, which is a amended clay, it gets up to about 36 inches. Uh, this is the host plant for the monarch. And this kind of has come back every year for us. There's a couple of advantages of the plant. One, deer do not even touch it, neither do rabbits, uh, neither do gophers or voles. And ours are just now starting to set buds, but it is a milkweed is the name. There's several milkweeds you can grow, but these are two of the natives. And then our little orange native that you see on the highway is tuberosa. It is, at least for me, it's more difficult to grow it than it is the swamp milkweeds. Uh, I guess maybe I overwater, you know. But anyway, the but both any of the agastaches and the milkweeds are vital. I mean, all the plants. I would say that everyone needs to have at least one of the yarrows, one of the blue fortunes, and then several of the different milkweeds if you want to have a butterfly garden. And the other thing is that yes, I am a perennial grower, but we also have grown annuals and cut flowers. And for example, you could plant a complete garden of zinnias that would also be a great pollinator garden and give you the added bonus of cut flowers. The ones I'm showing you also are good cut flowers, but they're not as they're not cut and cut again, if you follow what I'm saying, like you can with a zinnia. Next slide. Ice ballet is absolutely beautiful, and even though there was a comment that they couldn't see white, they can see white to a degree. There's either the scent or the fragrance, because both of these milkweeds have it's a vanilla smell to it. Really very, very sweet smelling when it's blooming. And the birds have, well, the birds and the insects, they do have sight, they do have hearing or vibration, and then they also have the sense of smell. That's one of the ways that they track it down. And bees seem to have an advantage over most of the other pollinators as far as their physical equipment that they have that help them zoom in on the plants, get directly to the nectar, and get out of there. The plant to the and both Ice Ballet and Cinderella are pretty much the same. They're two varieties of the same species. The next plant is a very interesting plant. This would be our first year growing it. Some of them are already started blooming. It's a bush clematis. Now you either have to plant it between shrubs so it has some support, or you use a structure like this. It seems to be a little flimsy to some degree, but the amount of blooms it produces, and the pollinators' attention, and I like strange stuff. So the fact that a clematis vine doesn't vine is unusual. And it's something that I like to have sometimes the first things of in the yard, not out in front of the street, but just to experiment with and see how it works. And then they're growing very well for us. Next slide. These are two that are, well, these are grown from cuttings that I did. Texas hummingbird bush is, when I say tough, I'm talking about it can take a beating in Oklahoma weather and come back unbelievable. And what I mean by that, in 2011, if you all were here, I'll just give you the statistics for Chickasha because I won't forget it, because we lost most of our orchard that year. We started off January with 2 days that were -35 wind chill. And then we moved into May with the last rain in Chickasha being May 24th or 26th. And we didn't have rain until October 2nd. And we had 82 days of over 100 degrees. And it was devastating. If you were here, you will remember it. It would be like saying the snowstorm of 1842 or something, It's a very memorable thing. Well, we discovered during that we were babying two plants by watering them under extreme circumstances or not. We made a decision on our landscape that we couldn't afford to water as deep as we need to try to save the orchard and some of the trees. And so our mother plant was out on a sandy loam that's on top of our clay, and it was a big plant, and it bloomed like it was like a parade. I mean, continual blooming, but it was loaded with more blooms than we'd ever seen on it. Whereas the ones that were in our nursery that we were watering, they were blooming fine, but they were nowhere close to the number of blooms. So this plant likes it a little dry so now we do not even water it. We just let it do its thing. The other plant, we don't grow this one. It's a tree. But if you like plants that are xeriscape and are not too big as far as trees, a desert willow. It's not a willow tree. It won't get into your septic systems, and it has orchid, sort of looks like Cattleya orchid blooms. My favorite variety in that is Bubba. It's a pink flower with a red, or it's a red flower with a red lip. There is one that's pink with a red lip. The lip is like a Cattleya orchid that hangs down from the other petals. The plant to the right is a top 10 hummingbird plant. I've recorded, and unfortunately, it's very difficult to watch hummingbirds, but it is a top 10 uh, attractor to hummingbirds. We have them planted between our pecan trees. Pecan trees are on 20 feet separate, and we put a bed between each of the pecan trees, and I planted the different colors. There's 3 colors of Turk's cap. I can tell you the hummingbirds prefer the red. And Big Mama is exactly what it is. It's about twice the size of the native original species. And great plants. Um, it really attracts the hummingbirds. And if you've never seen a hummingbird fight, and the squawking they do, or chirping, whatever word you want to use, for such a little bird, it uses a lot of energy. The other thing is that the hummingbird bush, the formal name is Aniscanthus flame. It's not grown by too many growers. I don't know why. I guess they think because it does well in Austin, it won't do well in Oklahoma City or Tulsa. Um, but it's a great plant, and it doesn't only attract hummingbirds, it also attracts butterflies. I actually watched, and I didn't have a video camera, but it was hilarious. There was a flight of sulfur butterflies. There were probably about 10 of them. I was trying to take photos of them, and every time I get close enough with the normal lens I had, they would move to the back of the plant where I couldn't see them. And so I went and got a telephoto lens so I could be far away. And then when this male ruby throat come in, his whole idea was that was his, you know, hummingbird bush. They had no business there. So he spent all his time chasing them off the plant. And all they would do is the same thing they did to me, is move to the back side of the plant. Wherever he was, they weren't. But those 2 plants, they need to be in everybody's garden. The hummingbird bush gets up to 4 foot. It will root if, let's just say, you have a heavy storm and it lays some branches on the ground. If you don't want it to root, go ahead and cut it off. Uh, the Big Mama gets right about 2.5 feet to 3 feet tall. And both these plants could be put in a full sun, they'll do well. They could be put in a partial shade. We have them pretty much under a row of trees, or in the case of the pecan trees, they're in between, but they do get a lot of sun. When I say that, I took a chainsaw to all our trees and cut all branches off that I could reach with my pole saw, and pretty much anything that's 8 foot and below is gone. So we get morning sun till about 10 o'clock, and then they get evening sun from about 5:30 to 6, and the sun goes down. Okay,
So
then we can go ahead.
which one was it that you said you don't have?
I have both of them.
Oh, perfect. I misunderstood.
Yeah, they're smaller plants, but they grow quickly, and we had grown them for well, typically we did festivals. Everyone knows that this year's a little bit different, and so all the festivals were canceled, and so we were growing them in smaller pots so that we could take more plants, if that makes sense.
Yes, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Now, there's a question in the chat.
Okay.
Could you grow the Turks in a big pot? Could it be grown in a pot?
You can grow a lot. You can pretty much grow any of the plants that I've shown in a big pot. The only problem with growing a perennial in a pot is that there's no thermal protection. Now, that doesn't guarantee that it's going to die, if you follow me, but I can tell you that there's 2 things that can happen during the winter that will definitely kill a lot of plants. And one is the fact that we do get ice here. And one year we left all our daylilies out, and we had ice on, and this was in early April. And by that time, daylilies were already actively growing, and the ice stayed on the plants for about 10 days. It killed the meristem of the plants. They had great roots, but no growing point. And so the point of what I'm saying is that you can do that, but there's a risk factor, and the plants might come back. And I mean, I've left hibiscus out and they've done fine. And the malva and the hibiscus are 2 closely related plants as far as the plant tree, I guess you would say. Amalva and then hibiscus are very, very close to the same thing as hollyhocks. And so, other questions?
No, not at this time.
Okay. Next one. This is actually a perennial plant of the year. You could actually get um, a list of all the perennial plants of the year, and the majority of them are going to be right at their great pollinator plants. They do well nationally, everywhere. One of the things that tags, and I'll just say this, is tags are national tags. And we live in Oklahoma, and Oklahoma has some of the roughest summers of any other state. That because we're inconsistent. I mean, just think of the weather that we've had through February, with a couple of days of in the 60s and 70s. I think we might even hit 80 and somewhere in February or March. And plants get confused. And when plants get confused, they bud out sooner than they should and can be damaged to some degree. But when a plant wins the perennial plant of the year, it's a national plant that you pretty much can go to town on the national tag. A lot of the times, I can tell you, when you go and you look at tags in a store and you read it and it says full sun, and I can give you a whole category that you cannot plant campanulas. Campanulas are bellflowers. Uh, there's probably 200 different bellflowers out there, like Scottish bells and cherry bells, and you can plant them there. They'll probably do okay, but they won't multiply. At least they didn't for me. I moved them on the east side of the house. Lo and behold, they became almost invasive, you know. And it was a riches of plants uh, that we have. I focus just on these few, just as give examples, um, for the simple reason these are, I would call them all stars. And anything you can do to help the monarchs. The other thing, if you want butterflies in your garden, you need to have two basic type of plants. One is nectar for the food, and then you need to have the host plants. Some of the butterflies, it's very easy to find the host plants. For example, black swallowtails will lay eggs on parsley. They'll lay it on bronze fennel. They'll lay it on rue. My favorite is bronze fennel, mainly due to the fact that I can see the eggs. So I know that there's, soon to be caterpillars on them. Uh, there's a lot of plants people get a little upset about. We sell passion vine, a hardy passion vine, and a passion vine attracts, and it's the butterfly that was on the very front, which is the Gulf Coast fritillary butterfly. Fairly large butterfly. It's if you think of a monarch being as a rectangle, a butterfly, it's taller than it is wide. This is more of a wide oval butterfly. Both of them are orange. Uh, there's no getting them confused. I mean, they do not look a thing alike, but the Gulf Coast fritillary lays its eggs specifically on the passion vine. And there's cultivated varieties, and there's the wild variety called maypop, all out of the same family. The two cultivars are incense and, oh gee, I just went blank. The other one's another purple. It's out of the same uh, Passiflora incarnata. Same line, same family, just a different. It's Inspiration is the name. So, but you need host plants. So and each county, like Grady County where we live, has 57 different butterflies. I mean, things I had never seen. And I can tell you and there's a video at the end that you guys get to see. This is the first year that we really packed porterweed into our display beds. I mean, when I say packed, there was at least 40 porterweeds in the beds, and it made all the difference in the world of attracting um, butterflies to our garden. We already had butterflies, but when I mean butterflies, I mean we're talking hundreds of butterflies. And so little kids would come over, and it's, if you guys want to come down in the fall when, the butterflies are plentiful and the monarchs are moving, just give us a call, But anyway, I'm not a butterfly expert. Okay, I know what's in our neighborhood and I will plant the stuff to try to bring them in there. Let's move to the next one and then we'll, just a little more about Renee and I, or me, I guess I should say specifically. I'm a hybridizer. And what you're looking at are three of the seedlings that I've actually, now I haven't propagated them to the point of being, selling them or anything like that, but it's just sort of fun to cross hibiscus, and it's really easy to do it, just to see what you would get. The middle one is a cross, and you'll see the parents on the next slide. But the Texas Star crossed with Blue River. Blue River was a wild white, pure white, no red center, no pink center, that was found on the Blue River above Tishomingo by, I want to say his name was Darby, and he worked for Chicago Botanical. I believe that's correct. But anyway, he took it back. He worked on the white, crossing it back with itself, and came up with a superior white flower. And I hate to say this, but a lot of people think white is not a color. And I can tell you it's a great color in front of a dark brick house, because if you put a dark red next to a beautiful dark red plant in front of a dark brick, it disappears from the street. But you put a white or a light pink, oh, it pops, you know. But each of us has our own aesthetic, and I like all the colors. I mean, why deny myself one of the colors that God created, you know? So the next slide. I also hybridize daylilies. I'm more advanced with the hibiscus as far as where I'm at. These are dips. There are two types of daylilies. There are diploids and there are tetraploids. Basically, all that means is that you can't cross the two. It's like a horse and a mule. Not quite in the same sense, because a mule, or a donkey would be the cross of those two. But you can't cross these two. These are dips. They're the way that they were meant to be, without any human intervention. Tetraploids have been developed to increase the genetic variety, or the gene pool. It basically doubled the dips, the genes in the dips. So you get a lot of new strange things. We grow 42 different daylilies for the market. And then we also, I mean, on our property, there's easily over 1,000 different plants I've got to play with, to cross with, the other daylilies that we have. And there's only 92,600 and some that are registered in, at the registry of daylilies. And so there's a plant for everybody. And I guess the point of talking, whatever your garden sense is, it's your garden. I mean, if you like a white garden, a pure red garden, or even a black garden, and maybe you want to call it the Edgar Allan Poe garden, and everything is dark, And so, there's a plant for everybody out there. So next slide. This is the two parent plants. On the left-hand side is the Texas Star hibiscus. It's a Hibiscus coccinus. It's a very large plant. In my yard, it will grow about 6 foot. I give my father-in-law to plant. He had a place, for some reason in their driveway, the builder put a big hole for a garden in the middle of his driveway. And the problem is that they had tilted the drive and all the concrete to drain into that garden. And they tried roses and they tried all things. And I said, well, here, why don't you put this Texas Star in there? And it was not a big plant, but it wasn't a small plant either. It was about 5 feet, and it was a 2-gallon pot. Well, within 2 years, that plant was typically growing at 8 feet, and it was already 4 foot across. Hibiscus do like water. And when I suggest to people that they basically plant it in a bowl, and they look at me sort of funny, I have to explain. You've got an elevation on your land that's level, a flat yard. So dig a hole deeper than the pot, and so that it collects water when it rains or when you're watering. To be honest, it makes it a lot easier watering if you just stick the hose there and walk away and let it run for maybe 5 minutes. The Blue River is just an absolute gorgeous plant. It doesn't have the genetics of the new plant. In 2013, there was a new plant that came out from the Walters Garden. It's based on the Fleming genetics. The Fleming brothers were in Nebraska, and they were growing hibiscus, hardy hibiscus, and they're the first dark leaf plants. They were the first to have lavender, sort of lavender looking. They did a couple of, well, I think they called it Crazy Plum, and uh, another one that had a plum name in it. And they were pretty plants for their time, but they still had the habit of only blooming one time, and they would set the seed a lot. I mean, they would set a lot of seed. Well, when Midnight Marvel came out, it was the first indeterminate plant, and the way that was accomplished is that they were crossing it with some of the other hibiscus that are out there, like the oak leaf hibiscus. I mean, they're gorgeous. They're not like the big dinner plates like these, like the Blue River or some of the others that are out there. They're smaller blooms, but they had this intersectional. So when they were blooming, instead of setting seed, that wasn't their main thing. Their main thing was to keep on blooming, sort of like tomatoes that are indeterminate, how they just keep growing. So you have to keep getting the support higher and higher if you want it to not, or cut it, you know. But on these, they don't get higher. They just keep pushing up more buds. The other thing that the Walters Gardens group did, they're in Michigan, and that's a zone 4 area where they're located. They're on the lake. So they have the lake effect. So it's a little bit warmer than some other parts of Michigan. But they also came up with, so when you look at a hibiscus that's from their program, it blooms at the top, the middle, and the bottom, more like a shrub. So it makes it a lot easier, for growing and for enjoying it as a plant. If you put a hibiscus in your front yard, and I've not lost, and it wasn't a wager with anyone, I just said, if you plant this where it's visible from your front street, the front of your property, where people can drive by and see it, there will be plant people that will stop and ask you what the variety is if they don't know it. And it's a way to meet neighbors. And we're not as neighborly as we used to be, especially now with our spatial isolation. And so, but we're changing that, right? So next slide. These are some of the crosses out of the other crosses out of the same cross with the Texas star, just to show the variation that you can get. The one on the left looks like, I don't know, someone's used it as a Kleenex to blot their lipstick, And when there is a color pattern on a plant, typically it's not a consistent pattern. It would vary from, petal, from bloom to bloom. Okay, next. We're getting close to the end. These are some more of the seedlings and these were all out of the same cross. And so you really never know. And it's always possible that when you do a cross, unless you put a netting around it to prevent bees or other pollinators to get in there, that these pollinators might have another idea of what the plant they want to cross with it, But it's just sort of fun. It's almost like Christmas to see the first blooms on seedlings, So, and next. This is an older plant, and it's called Lord Baltimore. It came out in I believe the late or early 90s. It is a sterile plant. It does not set seed, and both of these are Lord Baltimore. And just to show the variation, this is what the plants look like. It's still one of my favorite, mainly due to the fact of the size of the blooms, and it's more like a Texas star, growing a little more airily, so that the blooms are up there. There's height and depth, and you also get the movement. It's sort of like with daylilies. There are different daylilies that are out there in different forms, and some are tall that have motion in it, and that's another thing that you can add by a plant, just by the simple fact of how it reacts to wind, or there's a woodland called Rocky Top, a woodland echinacea that actually acts like a sunflower. And if you've ever driven up I-35 and gone across a sunflower field, in the morning they're facing east. In the afternoon, you must have said something to them because they've turned their back on you. You know, well, that is true with Rocky Top. Rocky Top, this echinacea actually will turn with the sun's, going across the hemisphere. So, any questions at this point? Ah, quiet bunch.
Is this one of the plants that you have available?
I've got a few of these available. We have 18 different varieties of hibiscus, and if anyone wants to see them, they can go to the group and they can pull down actually a complete list of every plant that we have available. Um, we haven't updated it because the plants that would update it aren't ready yet. And I've learned if you tell someone that you've got some, or we'll have something in a month, sometimes they get antsy because it's something they really want. So I'm just waiting until they're ready to go. In other words, rooted enough. I mean, there's a lot of stuff that I have moved up. For example, I can tell you that we grow Mexican ruella, Mexican petunias, and they're a great plant if planted in the right place. Um, the taller ones can be very, very, I don't want to say invasive, but very vigorous in their spread. So we plant them on the edges of beds way out. They're easy to remove if they invade another plant space. We also have Cadies. And then we do grow a few annuals, like we grow porterweed. Um, I mean, whether we sold one or not, uh, you know, hey, I'll put them all in my flower bed, and just have all the butterflies. But they're really a strange plant, not in looks, but just the fact of the way that butterflies will land on them. And again, it's sort of like maybe it's a UV thing. There's a sign there. It says free nectar for all those that land, even if there's not a bloom, and so the leaves are telling them something. I mean, bees can see green, so they can see a live plant. um, when we look at our eyesight's very different, and it varies between all of us, since as we age it gets not as great, at least not with me, seeing it. And we're looking, colors are a reflection of the composition of the flower. And sometimes the plant will look one color. Like we have a daylily called airbrush effect. It's a pink with a halo, but the halo in the center around the eye is opaque. And so it lets some of the pink bleed through. And if the sun hits it just right, to me, it looks like a silver pink. Very unusual look. At the same time, I don't know if it'd be as pretty if it was on a red, if that makes that halo if it was on a red. And we also do field trials, and what I mean by that is we learned very early. It was basically on the sunrise or sunshine series of echinacea that we need to field test plants before we grow them for market. And the reason for that is that some of the plants that are coming out that are crosses between two different species, sometimes they don't get the mule effect, that extra vigor. And I could name names as far as plants, in the sense of I couldn't, with the sunrise, that sun series that came from Alabama. It took a craze because there was purple one or lavender ones. There was a sunrise. There was some oranges and some reds. It was the first ones that had color in it. But when we grew them, all we could get was just one, bloom spike and a couple of blooms. And to be honest, if I can't get it, not that I'm any great gardener or anything, but using our natural organic, fish emulsion or whichever one we're using that year, then that's not good. We don't grow lavender for the simple reason in Oklahoma it's really hard to keep it alive if we have a week of rain. You know, I want all our customers to have success with our plants and bring the pictures back and show us how they've done for them. Sort of like our children. Anyway, next slide. This is all the information about us as far as if you want to follow us on Facebook. We have two different plant pages. Red Earth Daylilies, it's about daylilies, and then Renrick's Farm and Garden, it's about everything green. And then Guided by the Light is my photography and my wife's uh, greeting cards. She's a rabid collector of antique cards before 1920, and she takes those cards images and embellishes them into greeting cards, usually 5x7. And then the Renrick's Farm Plants, Oklahoma Proven, is a group that we created specifically for the C19 event that's taking place since all the festivals were canceled. On that, you can pull down a PDF of all the seed that we have packaged. Our seed line is called Great Plains seed. It's all non-GMO. It's all non-treated. The only thing that we don't have in the 350 plus packets is we do not have a corn. We found non-GMO corn, non-GMO, but we couldn't find any that was not treated. And we prefer just not to even deal with the chemicals. Uh, it hasn't hurt our plants. I mean, yeah, you'll see a bug bite here or there, but the plants have done very well for us. And then, as I said, you can download those. And then our garden is open by appointment. If you want to come here and buy, we do the Norman Farmers Market, we do the Edmond, we do the Ag Department, and as soon as this passes, we'll be back at the Children's Hospital. They have a monthly first Thursday market. And anyway, I'm open for questions. That's the end of the program. I hope we all learned something. It's sort of like every day we have an opportunity to learn something, either through our own questioning or through someone accidentally saying something or something we see. I mean, a lot of opportunity out there in gardening. And I've been playing in dirt for 65 years. Probably ate some of it too when I was little.
Can you tell us a little bit about the item that you donated for the silent auction?
You bet. It is one of my favorite. Our display beds, we have a display bed in front of the house, and we plant it with the current perennials that we are selling, and I usually move plants out. And this one is Summer in Paradise. It came out 3 years ago. It is a gorgeous, and I do mean gorgeous, and I think the word is cerise, Cerise. Maybe I mispronounced it, but is the color. In isolation, it looks like a red. If you take it to a red plant, it looks like it's not a red. And if you take it to a pink plant, it's definitely not a pink. It's in between. It's just a very unusual color. It's a very large bloom. They typically will bloom 9 to 10.5 inches. The largest ones we grow are 11 inches. So this is on the top end. The plant will be 4.5 feet tall. This is a 3-year-old plant. It's well, there's two of them, but I think whoever takes them home, or if they go to different homes, that they'll really enjoy the plant. They should take off immensely. I mean, hibiscus in some aspect look like to me asparagus. If you've ever watched asparagus, and not in a sense they look like the plant, but in the fact of the number of inches that they grow every day. And but this is a very, very substantial. And the reason I mention the display beds is that I'm not moving Summer in Paradise out of the garden. I'm actually going to. Typically, we did like 3 plants of the same plant in the center of one quadrant, and then do the same in the other 3 quadrants. Well, this year I'm going to make 4 plants in those other 2 quadrants, and then leave my 2 plants, which the plant there that is showing right now, um, that is Midnight Marvel, and that's another plant that, you know, just the more sun it gets, the darker it gets. It's all about the UV rays. both for the bees and for the hibiscus, as far as the photosynthesis of turning dark leaved. So and you know,
We have
I
some comments in the chat.
okay.
Leslie says thank you and that this is good information. And Robin says this was great. I'm so new and learned a lot. I'll check out your pages.
Well,
And
thank
then
you.
Alicia says I'm interested in the Turk caps and the ice ballet. Do you have those for sale?
Absolutely. The Turk's caps, they're small plants right now, but they'll grow very quickly. They're in 4.5 inch pots. And then the ice ballet are very large plants. Both of our uh, milkweeds are very large. This extra water that we've been getting, I mean, in the last week, I think Chickasha has 3 inches that we received, whereas I think Oklahoma City didn't get anything. And just that water alone caused the plants to grow about a half a foot. And so they're probably, some of them are approaching 30 inches already. So, and some of them are forming buds already. So it's going to be interesting because my van is 4 foot tall. So I'm going to have to do like I do with hibiscus that are over 4 foot, is tilt them to get them to the markets. But no. And then if you download anything, the best thing to do is place an order via email. Put your information, your phone numbers, so that if there's anything that we're questioning or have to inform you that we don't have, some stuff is limited on that's on that list. Not anything that I've talked about today, you know, but there's some unusual stuff on there. For example, I have a speckle lily. It's not, as far as I can figure out, it hasn't been available from any of the Dutch bulb companies, and it's a really cool plant. Check it out on our webpage. And then there's some other stuff that we're growing that we only have maybe 4 or 5 of that I haven't even listed yet, but I will in the next listing. And then I do have some older hibiscus, Plum Fantasy. Uh, we have that, and then I do have some of my crosses that are, I don't know, I think they're pretty cool, like the one with the pink and the white. We have stuff out of that, yeah. So yeah, we have children.
Then the next question in the chat is, do you have tomato plants?
We typically don't do tomato plants. I mean, I can ask my wife. She did about I guess 60. She hasn't planted them all, and I told her that she needs to plant them. They're starting to bloom, you know, and most of these are unusual varieties or old varieties. We don't, I guess you'd say, we enjoy the older, the brandy wines, and the ones that have a acid taste to them, or maybe they're a little bit sweeter. Um, and maybe they don't produce as much as some of the, like Florida 91 and some of the hybrids, you know. And we do have tomato seeds, and you can get a plant growing pretty big by 2 weeks, you know. And we have two growing, if you don't know, we have two vegetable growing seasons in Oklahoma. We have the spring season, and then actually you start planting in August. And OSU has a complete track on that that you can pull down from the OSU site or get from your local county extension office of all the plants, when to plant green beans, when to plant tomatoes, you know, all that good stuff, all that good food. And that's why everyone should be shopping at the farmers markets from local vendors, because it tastes much better. I mean, I can tell you that if you buy a chicken from a chicken raiser, you know, that's had full run, it tastes very different than that Tyson chicken that I can tell you funny stories that the kids had a problem with the taste. So when they were little, they thought we had processed some of our own.
Well, Rick is participating in our curbside event, so anybody that would like to purchase plants, go ahead and get your orders in with Rick. Um, where would be the best place to reach you to place an order?
Well, they can email me, Renrick at earthlink.net, which is on this PowerPoint. or they can, and I really hate to say this, but they could use Messenger. The only problem I have with Messenger is that I cannot print it, I can't copy it, or you can just call me, and leave a voicemail on our landline. I typically don't take my cell phone with me in the nursery, mainly due to the fact that there's so much water, and I don't have one of those waterproof cases, or so I guess I could probably work it somehow. And I know that some people have their car horn honk when, you know, but I'll be honest, after working for 42 years in corporate life, and then when cell phones and laptops came out, it became our, I don't know, we were dragging a big concrete block around, if you know what I'm saying, because we were expected to answer 24/7. And it's sort of like, there's some freedom. I can go outside and play in the dirt, and get totally messed up. Now, if I know, I mean, this week I will keep the phone closer and turn it up full, outside. But I'll just say I'm not as techy as I probably should be, but I can grow some plants.
Well, Rick,
I,
this has been a great treat.
well, I appreciate you guys, and I appreciate the opportunity to present. And then you've got the video you can share with them, and there's a video that if there's time she can show. If not, it will be posted,
It,
and and your kids will love it. If you have kids, it's not a sales presentation. All it is butterflies and music and flowers.
and I'll post it to the page right after our next session. Our next session's getting started here in a minute.
Okay,
So I'll
thank
post
you
it
very
to our.
much.
Oh no, thank you, Rick. I just wanted to really say we've appreciated it. I would say I feel honored that you've taken the time and put together such a wonderful presentation. I'm I'm a beginner, and I've learned so much. I've taken 2 pages of notes. It was awesome. And I really appreciate your time meeting with all of us today.
Well, hopefully, just remember, just because there's a color scheme doesn't mean you have to follow it. You know, use your own aesthetic. The plant the colors you like. And make sure your other half knows your colors that you like, so that when they buy flowers or they go to a farmer's market, they pick out the right color. Anyway, thank you.
Well, thank you, Rick. Everybody have a great night.
Thanks.
Thanks. Bye.